Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Near Mint Condition. I am Omar, and today I am going to talk about the comprehensive reading order of Fantastic Four. This first part, I'm mainly going to talk about the oversized hardcovers and the omnibuses. I'll probably do a second part if people want me to, where the trade paperbacks fit into all this. So leave those comments down below if you want to see that. Alright, so let's jump in with Marvel's first family. Stay tuned. Okay, let's kick this off with Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 1. This is the first reprint. I missed out on the original one, and as you can see, the omnibus spine here is a lot different. I'll post a picture of the original spine, what it looked like. But this is the reprint, and I've said it before, I like to go with the variant covers because the original cover is already in here, unless they're hideous. Sorry, Scotty Young, that New Warriors. No, thank you. I'll stick with the Mark Bagley one. All right, here we go. Let's get this started. This is actually one of the very first Omnis that Marvel put out back in 2002, I believe. 2002, 2003. I ended up getting the reprint back in 2005 or 6. And since then, it's on its fourth reprinting. And when these things go out of print, you can look for yourself to see how ridiculous prices get. But anyway, this collects Fantastic Four 1 through 30 and Fantastic Four Annual Number 1. This is the very first Marvel H comic book. So there's a lot of first appearances here in this very first book. You have the first appearance of Fantastic Four, of course, Doctor Doom, the Baxter Building, Alicia Masters, Diablo, the Awesome Android, Mole Man, Impossible Man, Molecule Man, Rama Tut, who ends up becoming one of my favorite villains of all time. He ends up becoming, of course, Kang the Conqueror. But he appears as Rama Tut in this in issue 19. This is all done by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, or Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, vice versa. Don't mean to discriminate, but a lot of the artwork and the co-plot did come from Jack Kirby. And it's really interesting because like the first 4 or 5 stories, they read like those giant monster-sized epics and those drive-in movie science fiction fantasies that usually appeared in comic books back in the late 50s and early 60s. But by the time we get to Doctor Doom's first appearance in issue 5, you can see a change in tone. You begin to see why people thought how revolutionary it was for the time. While the comic books, they remained episodic, they start to feel more and more connected. It's really cool how you get that transition from the earlier issues to later issues. And all of this, in this wonderful omnibus, has been collected in an epic format as well. But these are oversized, and that's the way I like to collect most of my things. Some of my books like Thor and Captain America and Iron Man, I don't mind getting the epics. And let me show you here what makes this awesome too. This has all the original letter pages, which is one of my favorite things about these Omnis. And it also contains a lot of pinups and critical commentaries, a historical overview, and some unused artwork, and some of the forwards and afterwards found in the Marvel Masterworks line. And this is some of that stuff I was talking about. Now, let's move on to Volume 2. Here we have Volume 2. This has gone through 2 printings. This is the very first one, with Ledron on the cover. And continuing more of that Marvel H goodness by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, this book collects Fantastic Four 31 through 60, Annuals 2 through 4, and Not Brand Ek 1. If I were to recommend one of these that you could get your hands on, this is the one. This is the Marvel H book to get. This is completely awesome. Full of great epic stories. I don't think Fantastic Four got more epic than this. Yes, I enjoy John Byrne's and Jonathan Hickman's, which I'll talk about later on. Their run a lot more, but as far as this set the bar for epic storytelling back during this time. This introduces us to the Frightful Four, the origin of Doctor Doom, the wedding of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. We have the first appearance of the Inhumans, the Silver Surfer, you may have heard of that guy, Galactus, the Watcher, and of course the debut of one of the greatest creations, and speaking so because his movie did so damn well, the Black Panther. And I cannot not talk about one of the greatest stories in here, This Man, This Monster. It is probably widely regarded as the greatest Fantastic Four tale of all time. This omnibus right here makes you realize why they are given the title the world's greatest comic magazine. Man, I don't think it got better than this back then. But if you're a completist like me, you keep moving on. So let's look at Volume 3. And here we have Volume 3. Same design to the spine. Alex Ross on the cover, again, because I like those variants, and then all the covers in the back. Get more Stan Lee and Jack Kirby goodness in here. This is probably the longest run they had together working on a book. And please do correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. Now, this collects Fantastic Four 61 through 93, annuals 5 through 7, not Brand X numbers 5 through 7. Also, correct me if I'm even saying that right for that magazine. Introduction of him, who will later, of course, be known as Adam Warlock. I don't want to give too much spoilers away, but some of these stories, come on, they're freaking 50, 60 years old. So I'll talk a little bit about that stuff, but as we get closer and closer to the modern age stuff, I'll talk less and less spoilers. So this book contains the first appearance of the Kree, the first appearance of Annihilus and him, which we just looked at, who later becomes Adam Warlock. It has team-ups with the Inhumans in Silver Surfer, the birth of Franklin Richards, the return of Doctor Doom, Mole Man, and Galactus. And we have the first switch out on the Fantastic Four as Crystal becomes one of the new members of the Fantastic Four. And this is all we have so far, sadly. Let me look here through the back and I'll tell you exactly what's going on. With Marvel, they kind of stopped making these, and now they just acquired the rights back from, of course, Fox. So hopefully we'll get more Fantastic Fours, as that reprinting of Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 1 and the John Byrne Omnibus Volume 1 reprint may be leading to something in the future. So I hope so. I hope we get a Volume 4, because Jack Kirby drew this all the way up to issue 102. Then he came back for 108. But then if we do a Volume 4, it'll also have great artists like John Buscema and John Romita, and then stories written by Archie Goodwin. So come on, Marvel, keep making these, because we have a big gap after this. We go all the way to Fantastic Four Volume 1 by John Byrne, and let's talk about that book. Here's the John Byrne cover I went with, Volume 1. Again, pictures in the back. And let's look at this book real quick. Now, this is the kind of book that kind of aggravates me, and you'll see here in a second. So, this collects Marvel Team-Up 61 through 62, Marvel 2-in-1 number 50, Fantastic Four 215 through 218, 220 to 221, and then 232 all the way to 262, Annual 17, Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man number 42, The Thing number 2, Avengers 233, and Alpha Flight number 4. And as I was saying, this is one of those omnibuses that collects a freaking issue with completists and OCD people like me, because as you can see, it leaves gaps. Byrne really started the artwork with issue 208, and I realize that that's in the middle of a story, but I wish they had reprinted those in here. And then we have issue 219 that's missing in action because it was written by Doug Moench and drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. And then we have the huge chunk of 222 to 230 also done by that team, and I guess that's what epics are for, but that's what's missing from these. I like to have them in oversized format or not at all. It's like that issue of Frank Miller Daredevil that's missing from the first omnibus. It annoys me. But anyway, let's talk about this really quick. This volume really sets up a lot of the best Fantastic Four stories I've ever read. This is probably my second favorite run on the book, because volume 2 is where Byrne's stories really shine. By the way, this was recently reprinted, so if you missed out on it the first time, strongly suggest you buy the reprint, because these are wonderful stories in here. Not to upsell volume 2, but volume 2 is really where it gets going, and it's freaking awesome. And here is volume 2. Look at the back real quick and talk about the book here. Let's open it up. Okay, so credits, forward, it tells you what happened before, issue of Alpha Flight, number 4, again, it's weird. This collects Fantastic Four 261 through 295, so that's good. That's good for people like me, because that's a giant chunk of Fantastic Four, all in one. And then we have Annuals 18 and 19, Alpha Flight number 4, which we saw in the beginning, and I thought it was already collected in the first volume, weird. Avengers Annual number 14, and Thing number 10 and number 19, which were drawn by John Byrne, and material from Secret Wars number 2. I'm sorry, Secret Wars Volume 2, number 2. Weird to say that. Where something big happens. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about spoilers in these, because like I said, these are about 25 years old. Everything that was set up in the first book is here. The payoff is here. So most of this was all written by John Byrne, and then we got Mark Grunwald and Roger Stern. And we've got art from John Byrne, of course, and Mark Bright, Jerry Ordway, and Ron Wilson. So we have She-Hulk replacing The Thing, because after the events of Secret Wars Volume 2, The Thing decides to leave the Fantastic Four. I don't want to tell you why, but he has his reasons. And we have Sue Richards no longer being the Invisible Girl. She becomes the Invisible Woman. Mr. Fantastic gets tried for his crimes against the universe. One of the coolest freaking issues ever. And then, of course, one of the most important and real issues I've ever read in any comic book. We have issues 266 and 267, which is the pregnancy of Sue Storm and the outcome of what happens. It is a really powerful story, and I don't want to give away what happens, even though I'm sure everybody already knows, because it's one of those stories everybody brings up in their run or everybody talks about, because it's just that powerful. So I'll let you find out for yourself if you've never read it, because it's a wonderful and powerful and sad read. And then we have, of all things, the resurrection of Jean Grey, which is where they find the cocoon, and Jean Grey has been really down there. She was not the Dark Phoenix, as it turns out, so a lot of things have been retconned just for her in time to jump in and join X-Factor. And yeah, believe it or not, that's all in this run. And then we have, of course, covers and things like that. This is why I love Omnis. That and the oversized artwork, of course. Speaking of oversized artwork, I did not get the ridiculously gigantic Behold Galactics book. Because, yeah, I'm good. I have Volume 2, which holds the story. And as much as I like Jack Kirby, his art oversized, just not for me. I know that probably sounds blasphemous to some of you. Here's some designs. Oh, no, this is from the index books that Marvel had. Uncolored pages, and then of course the recolored stuff that were part of the Visionary trade paperbacks. And then we get to Acts of Vengeance, which collects Fantastic Four 334 to 336. This is the Marvel event where villains decided to switch their opponents, their heroes that they normally fight. And this is the next oversized format book here. That's the only reason I'm showing it. Not a lot to talk about. The Acts of Vengeance itself played out through Avengers and Avengers West Coast, so that's where you would go and read those. Okay, let's look at the next big book that really doesn't belong here, but that is X-Men and Avengers Onslaught, collecting the final issue of Fantastic Four, which is 416. Now we have a Heroes Reborn Omnibus coming out next year, collecting Heroes Reborn half, Captain America 1 through 12, Avengers 1 through 12, Fantastic Four 1 through 12, Iron Man 1 through 12, and then material from the Incredible Hulk 450. And that's all I will say about that, because, yeah, I mean, it has one issue of Fantastic Four. And let us not forget Fantastic Four Annual 21, found in the Evolutionary War. That was part of that crossover. These are all annuals. Fantastic Four Annual 22 was part of Atlantis Attacks. And yeah, another X-Men title here. Fantastic Four Annual 23 was the kickoff to Days of Future Present. Okay, next up, my favorite run on Fantastic Four by Mike Wieringo and Mark Waid. Let's look at this really quick. This is it. This is the one I'm recommending. Out of all these books, this is the one I'm recommending you readers. And this was only available in trade paperback, complete collections, and an oversized hardcover. And Marvel recently decided to print this in an omnibus format. Lucky for you, this is still in print, because this story is amazing. This is Mark Waid. I feel like I always hype up Mark Waid because of his amazing run on Flash and Kingdom Come and Daredevil and all these wonderful books that he's written. But this is one of my favorite Mark Waid stories. Out of all of them, like I said, this is the one you need if you want to find out who the Fantastic Four and what they stand for. And this collects Fantastic Four after the relaunch, issues 60 through 70. Don't worry, it comes back to the original number, because then it goes back to 500 through 524, and then issue 500, Director's Cut. The only thing that's really missing that I wish I had kept was the final What If, not the final What If, but the final art by Mike Wieringo, which is a What If story. He did like 7 pages and then he passed away. And I really hate that, because I love looking at this and I miss the guy's artwork. So Mark Waid takes us back to the basics of making Fantastic Four who they were always supposed to be. Adventurers, explorers, astronauts. Yeah, sure, Galactus and the Inhumans, Diablo, and all those characters come knocking at the door, starting trouble. But that just comes with the job. The first job is to be a family and to have adventures. And that's what they bring it back to. It's family first. And if that's not your thing, if you don't like that for some reason, no worries. Mark Waid and Mike Ringo have you covered. Because there's a layer of evil and darkness in this book that only Ringo can hide with this glorious cartoony artwork that he has. And I mean, it gets dark. Especially with that Doctor Doom storyline. You have death, you have resurrection, and they even get to meet God. And they reject that invitation to stay in heaven. So they get this cute little drawing by God, who, by the way, is portrayed as Jack Kirby. I always thought that was cool. So he makes him a little sketch. And looking at that little sketch and talking about Mike Ringo gets me a little misty-eyed. Because, I mean, the guy passed away when he was 44. Too young. I'd love to have known what his artwork looked like now, since he had evolved. You have other artists, too, like Paco Medina. But, yes, this is the one I highly recommend. I don't want to flip too much through here, but this is the one that you need in your collection. Okay, next up is Planet Hulk. I know, we're finding Fantastic Four all over the place. And actually, I'll talk about the one that I sold off about 5 years ago, too, that I no longer have. So this collects Fantastic Four 533 through 535. And then collecting part of the What If, Planet Hulk, and of course, Hulk 88 through 105. Now, what I don't have here with me anymore, they did have an oversized hardcover Civil War Fantastic Four. And that collected Fantastic Four 536 through 543. So right before the Mark Millar and Dwayne McDuffie run. And issues of Black Panther and She-Hulk. So, yeah, I sold it off as part of my Civil War set. And because I figured by now we would have a proper Civil War omnibus or a proper run of JMS's Fantastic Four. But no, Marvel decides to do a Civil War box set instead. So, I was wrong on that. And let's keep going through here, because next up we have my third favorite run on Fantastic Four. Okay, so this is one of the books I was talking about when they go out of print, they get insane prices on the aftermarket, on Amazon or on eBay. I don't understand Marvel's method of reprinting. I've been in the damn collected editions game for over 15 years, and I still don't know why they decide to reprint some stories and why other Omnis stay in the whale status. But this is Hickman Volume 1, also available in complete editions and trade paperbacks. This collects Dark Reign, Fantastic Four 1 through 5, which is kicking it off. Even though it's part of the Dark Reign story, it is an awesome story about the kids. And Fantastic Four 570 through 588. And then FF, which is the Future Foundation, 1 through 5. And then material from the Dark Reign, the Cabal. I love that Jonathan Hickman gets to design the way the books look, so he puts all the covers in the back. The books are printed in the reading order that he wants. So let's talk about it really quick. This is my third favorite run on the book, and one that really can't be missed. So Marvel, get your shit together and reprint this book for people. I think that Hickman expertly weaved together numerous subplots, including the Council of the Alternate Universe Reed Richards, and he even kind of cleaned up some of that Mark Millar crap from New Earth, whatever. And then we have the future Franklin and Valeria Richards, their kids, because by now we have Valeria. She was born during Chris Claremont's time, which is not collected in oversized hardcover, but right after they came back during the Heroes Reborn era. And they're kind of screwing up the timelines. And then we have Sue. She becomes the Queen of the Fishes. Johnny Storm in this badass Negative Zone storyline. That's a great story. I'm not going to flip too much through there. And I think it's really cool because he sets up so much. Because the stories keep getting bigger and bigger. And they never stop moving forward. And while, you know, sometimes I think I miss some little things because they seem insignificant at first. He quickly reminds me how stupid I am for doing that. Because he brings it up issues later. And let's talk about Volume 2 really quick. Okay, this is Volume 2, a little easier to find than Volume 1, but still out of print. Collecting FF 6 through 23, Fantastic Four 600 through 611, and then 605.1. This contains the remaining of Hickman's run. This has more of that fun space adventure, scientific discovery, and then awesome heartfelt moments. And actually, this one kind of makes me laugh. This is probably my favorite Hickman run out of anything he's written for Marvel Comics. He does an outstanding job of playing the long game, like I was talking about. He lays the seeds in earlier volumes that will pay off huge in this volume. Like I said, they pay off huge. It doesn't mean that there's not a single standalone issue that is awesome, because there are plenty of those. What he started in the first one, he finishes off and wraps it up nicely here, ready for the new writer to take over. This was a freaking amazing ride, and I hope that Marvel decides to reprint it, because it has heavy ties to the stuff that he did in Avengers and Secret Wars and even S.H.I.E.L.D. So come on, Marvel. Let's get these reprinted and talk about the final Fantastic Four Omnibus. I don't know who in Marvel's collected department decided to put this in omnibus format. Out of all the stuff we could have put in here, we decided to go with Matt Fraction's run. Whatever. So we have Fantastic Four 1 through 16. It's the new revamped series after Jonathan Hickman leaves. And then we have FF 1 through 16, which is the title that goes side by side that came out monthly. Mike Allred drew FF, and then Mark Bagley drew the Fantastic Four ongoing. And then we've got the Marvel .1, which was a mess anyway. So the premise of the story, it sounds pretty cool. It's Reed Richards and Sue decide to take the family for a relaxing time away from Earth. So they take Ben, Johnny, and the kids on a year-long vacation, which, you know, going back to the basics again. Adventure, sci-fi, cool. But it just didn't come off good. So, in the absence of Marvel's family on Earth, the Fantastic Four handpick a substitute, FF. So we have Ant-Man, Medusa, She-Hulk, and the new Miss Thing. And they stand ready to guard the Earth against enemies. And actually, I enjoyed this more, the FF stuff. Maybe because I'm a huge fan of Mike Allred. He'll get me to read anything. I enjoy Innovation, but the storyline was so difficult to follow. Everything was just minimized to two-dimensional characterizations. And I came off of Hickman's run, so I wanted more than that. Like I said, I'm not sure who approved this. There's so many other great runs we could have been collected in omnibus format, like Walter Simonson's run or Tom DeFalco's run, or hell, just give me volume 4 of the classic stuff, the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stuff. Now, the Fantastic Four since then has been canceled, and I'll talk about the final arc of that in trade paperback form. If you want to see that, leave a comment down below, and I'll be happy to do a follow-up to this with trade paperbacks. And that is everything that has been reprinted so far in oversized hardcover and in omnibus format, besides that Heroes Reborn omnibus coming out next year. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And let me know in the comments down below what other comprehensive reading orders you would like me to tackle. I've gotten a lot of comments on those, and I've got a lot of ideas. But as long as I have them, I'll be more than happy to do them. Again, don't forget to check out our weekly show that comes out every Thursday, where we talk about anime, video games, comic books, manga, and figures, toys. Call them whatever you want. And our live show at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays will come back on January 1st, so we'd love for you guys to join us. We'll be talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that is 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, January 1st. Again, this was Omar. Thank you very much for sticking with me, and stay minty, my friends.